Have you ever bought a brand new RC car, thrown way too much money into upgrading it, and then figured out that some of the stock parts still aren't up to par? Well, you're in luck, because today that's exactly what's happened to me. I'm John Holmes with Holmes Hobbies, and stay tuned for the Wraith 1.9 Drivetrain figuring it out. So I've got this relatively new but well beat in Wraith 1.9, and I've upgraded a lot of the electronics in it, and yet it still doesn't seem as smooth as it should. So what we're gonna do today is tear into the drivetrain and figure out what the heck is going on. So in the last video, you may have noticed that I had a few complaints about the smoothness of the drivetrain on the video. I have replaced the motor, the ESC, and a few bits and bobs here that I've already forgotten what I've done. But you can look in the last videos and see what I've done. And it still has a little hitch in the drivetrain. Now, just pushing it around on the table, the Magnum motor has so much drag that I can't really get it to go. And of course, I am absolutely ruining my scrim, the table cover, if you don't know what that is, by working on this rig on my fancy scrim. But I'm doing it all for you. We're gonna get dirt on it. So once it gets rolling, it's got a little hitch that stops it right there, right there, right there, right there. And that keeps it from having the smooth, low speed control that I know that my products are capable of, and I know that this rig should be capable of it. So what I gotta do is crack into it. Maybe you also have a Wraith that has a little bit of a hitch in the drivetrain. If so, let me know. But maybe yours is super smooth. And if so, I wanna know that too. Just let me know all your comments about the Wraith 1.9. But what I gotta do today is get into this rig and figure out where the hitch in the drivetrain is. I assume that it's probably going to be inside my transmission because of how frequently that it happens. But I can also rotate my tire and record how many times the hitches happens in one rotation, and maybe that would help us. So really this is going to be a troubleshooting guide, I suppose, to drivetrain issues. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10 times that is sticking around there. I know that the center differential, the center pumpkin has about a 3.8 to 1 reduction ratio, so it's not in there. Because if it happened once every rotation on that, it would be like 3 or 4, 5 times in one rotation. Since it's double that or more than double that, I'm gonna look first in another part of the drivetrain. And to also help narrow it down, we can take off these drive shafts and then roll the rig and see if the rig rolls freely. Now, I should mention that the way that the Wraith axles work, the pinion in the axle kind of relies on this drive shaft to keep it in the proper depth. So we may find that it wants to roll smoothly in one direction but not the other, but the hitch may be gone. So I'm going to take off the rear drive shaft. It ain't in there. It definitely is not in there. Set that aside. Now we'll take off the front drive shaft. And this is just a process of elimination. We're just troubleshooting at this point. And hopefully our troubleshooting will help us find out what we need to take apart. Because the worst thing in the world is to do something that you don't need to do, especially if you don't enjoy doing it. All right, so this guy won't quite slip off. Super smooth, so it's not in the front axle housing. And since I don't actually need to take both of these off to get the transmission out, I'm gonna put this back on. And to tell you the truth, I do actually like working on the rigs. But I don't like taking a rig apart for absolutely no reason, because the more you take a rig apart and put it back together, the more likely you're going to strip screws, wear things out, etc., etc. There's more places to have errors when we're doing like that. All right, so I probably can't take this transmission out without dropping the skid plate off, so I'll drop the skid plate using my handy-dandy power driver. Don't recommend this, because you'll melt the screws if you're not careful, but it's a lot faster. Well, I guess you technically wouldn't melt the screws, right? I mean, y'all should be calling me out in the comments too whenever I make mistakes like that. We would melt the plastic that the screws go into, but not quite the screws. Boy, wouldn't that be something if this DeWalt was powerful enough to melt a screw. Well, we're talking about power tools. Who likes DeWalt? Who likes Makita? Who likes all the other brands that I can't remember right now? There's so many. Are you a Black & Decker fan? I hope not. Black & Decker doesn't make bad stuff, I guess, but I tend to, you know, buy once, buy right. Is that the thing? Buy whatever. Y'all know what I mean. I tend to go for higher quality tools because I'm kind of a tool collector. Because I'd prefer to have my tools last. Hopefully I didn't piss off any Black & Decker fans. I can tell you that my Black & Decker drill that was given to me as a child was the worst drill that I've ever owned. All right, so we took the transmission off of the skid plate. We have the skid plate disattached, if that's even a word, from the rest of it. Now, this is why I like to sometimes keep leads that are extremely long. You never know when you need to work on the rig and have enough room to remove your electronics without having to get your hands inside this sort of difficult to work on rig. All right, so we're gonna set this aside. And now, I think I know where the problem is inside this transmission. I think. All right, so it doesn't, yeah, there it is. I was gonna say it doesn't feel too bad. Yeah, it's got a little hitch in it. So, first thing, we'll make sure that our pinion meshes properly. And second thing, we're gonna just throw our tools on the floor. Ah. And it helps to keep your screws all in piles, kind of. I'm not trying to tell y'all what to do or anything, but when you work on a rig, it really helps to keep your screws in piles so that you know what's what. All right, so we want to make sure that our pinion mesh is not too tight, but not too loose. So there's a teeny bit of play. Maybe we can zoom in on that tight cam and you can see the teeniest amount of play between that spur and pinion. And that's what you want to shoot for, is that you don't have any spots that are just absolutely super tight, and there'll be a little bit of out of round on your spur gear. So like right now, there's no play, but it's also not too tight. Well, I say that it feels a little tight there. She feels a little tight, and we're back to being loose. So I think that it should be fine. But what I'm going to do next is take off the actual pinion, or at least loosen the pinion on the motor, and that will give us a better idea of maybe there's a little hitch inside the transmission. I'm just going to loosen it and let it rotate on the shaft. Nope, can't do that. Never mind. It hits. These new axial transmission cases I am not quite used to, I suppose. Now let's see how easily the transmission itself rotates. Well, dang it, that's pretty smooth. Which leads me to believe that it was simply our pinion mesh being too tight in one spot that was causing our problems. But since there's a little bit of run out, if you're a machinist, it'd be called run out to have your part wobbling on axis. It's not much run out. No, there we go. So there is a tight spot in the transmission right there. And I think that's what's causing our issue. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel like a burr is inside the transmission though. A burr would be kind of a hard catch. It feels like one of the gears inside the transmission is actually out of round. Or it could be the lower gear being mounted a little bit off center on our outputs. So what's going to be my best course of action? Let's take apart the transmission and see if we can see anything. So we need to take off these guys, our outputs. And it looks like these are identical front to rear, so we don't have to worry about swapping them by mistake. Now we get to take apart the transmission, and we get to see how well Axial greased this from the factory. This is always a fun thing to do. And I'm having trouble getting to this screw because the magnum keeps attracting my, my bit to the can. There we go. Speaking of row, does anybody gotta have a cat? I've got one, and I don't like him because he's an asshole. I don't like my cat. But fortunately, it's not my cat. It's my wife's cat, so we deal with him. Wow. He about got eaten by a fox yesterday. How fun. Has a patch of fur missing from his back. I told my wife we had a fox in the neighborhood. Again, not my cat. Do y'all love cats? How about dogs? All right. So, hey, look at there. We got grease in the transmission. That is a good sign. And all metal gears, which maybe I should be paying attention to the specs of the rigs that I buy, but I didn't realize that they were putting all metal gears in here. Ooh, but what we do have is some problems that I caused, it looks like. We've got these little bits of plastic on the inside, and you can see right here where it looks like somebody ran a screw that was too long into the case. Let's not look at this pile of screws where one of the screws is too long. That self-caused problems, that's the best ones. So we at least know what more than likely caused the problem, and that was user error. It happens. So be extremely careful, especially if you take apart your rig like me. The screws that hold your radio box in are the same screws that go into the transmission, but they're longer, and you can kind of take a look here. These are the ones that are supposed to go into the radio box. These are the ones that are supposed to go into your transmission. I wasn't paying enough attention last time, and it looks like I got plastic bits all inside my transmission. That is a shame. However, it is also easily fixable. Yay for easily fixable mistakes that I caused myself. So what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to take all of the gears out. We need to clean all of the plastic out, and then we will need to re-lube the gears once we clean all the bits off. So, oh yeah, look at there. That's another little oopsie. 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 Whoopsie. Yep, that's my mistake. And just so I don't get grease all over my fancy scrim, we're gonna take these guys out. Well, that's nice. That's nice to know that, yep, there's a little plastic bit. It's nice to know that I caused my own problems. So now what we need to do is get ourselves a knife and clean those guys out. And I can probably do most of the cleaning with a knife. And hey, I actually remembered to bring a knife today. Let's see what I've got today. Cricut knife, or CRKT knife. I know that my fan base are probably a lot of guys that carry knives. What are you carrying today? I actually remembered to bring a knife, so that was nice. This grease smells like cosmoline. Or maybe horse hooves. All right. Oh yeah, all kinds of plastic in there. Even if you're experienced, sometimes you can still make mistakes. Mistakes happen. We are human. That was my fault for running the wrong screws into it, probably. What I think was happening is that the gear, this lower gear, was kind of wobbly and rubbing on that piece of plastic there. Matter of fact, I can actually see the rub marks, so I'm fairly certain that that was our problem. Just user error. And what I'm going to actually do is try to save some of this grease, because I'm pretty sure I don't have any other grease here. So I'm saving the good grease so that we can re-lube once I ensure that all my gears are cleaned of our plastic bits. Now we get to shave the case. And while I'm cutting on this plastic, it feels like it is a nice high quality, high nylon content, probably fiber reinforced. It feels like it has fiberglass. Maybe you can hear that scraping noise. That is definitely the sound of fiber reinforced plastic. Oh yeah, all kinds of crap stuff coming out. And as you can see, there is the same thing on the other side. And it looks like it was indeed rubbing on our gears. More than likely I had one of the long screws installed into one of these holes. And so there was force being applied from the screw, pushing the plastic directly into the gear. What a bonehead move. Yes, we indeed have plastic in our gears. That would explain a lot. That would explain a lot. This is great for your knife. I like to hone my knives by cleaning gears. All right, so however many minutes into that, I have cleaned all of the self-inflicted pain out of this transmission. As you can see, there was a whole gob of plastic bits that were mixed in with the grease, and it was all my fault. I made the mistake of running gear or screws that were too long into the transmission. And I'm sure that I'm not the only person who has made a mistake in their life. Have you ever made a mistake with your RC cars that ended up costing you either time or money? What was your worst mistake? What was your most expensive mistake? That's probably an even better question. This is by far not my worst mistake on an RC car. I do typically tend to try to kill electronics, and so my mistakes are usually self-inflicted, just like this one, but more along the lines of I'm trying to kill an object. Am I successful? So installing this is kind of hard because of the strength of the magnet on the Magnum. It's kind of, yeah, okay. On with the show. I'm collecting all of the ferrous bits off the table. All right, so let's spin this guy. Oh yeah, that's a little more like it. That's a little more like what it should be. I figured there was something in the transmission. I didn't figure it'd be my own fault. But that's why we opened it up and checked, right? And that's why I am releasing this video and not editing out all of my mistakes. Because I'm going to be real with you. I am a person. You may not believe me, but I am a normal human being. I actually sleep for 6 to 8 hours every single night. But how about you? Do you like to sleep? I doubt it. Y'all are all machines. Or maybe y'all are aliens. What's your favorite alien movie? Mine has got to be that one with Arnold Schwarzenegger on Mars. You know the one, Total Recall. Oh yeah. Best aliens in that movie. Were they even aliens though? I mean, it was more just like people from Earth who had mutated over a while. But I guess technically they're still aliens because they're not from Earth anymore at that point, right? Are you with me? Do you agree on this? All right, so I am not going to install this screw into my transmission case again. That was just a mistake. that I shouldn't do the same mistake again, right? I mean, we're trying to learn from our mistakes, not just repeat them over and over. This is why we're, making a video so that everybody else can be sure that they don't make the same mistake as me. That's basically all my videos are. It's just one long running mistake after another. Oh yeah, yep. I do believe this may fix our low speed control issue. No more lurching. All right, back to pinion mesh. We want to make sure that there is no tight spot, that we have just a teeny bit of play in the loose spots. Too much play. Too much play. Teeny bit of play. Teeny bit of play. Too much play. Too much play. There we go. So we want to shoot for no play in our tightest position, but not so tight that it's too tight and causes excess load. And then the rest of the place is just loose enough to give you a little tick. Let's see if the mic will catch this. Just a teeny little tick of play. No play there. Teeny little tick. I think y'all can hear that. All right, make sure that this is properly tightened. After you properly tighten it, you should probably curse the RC gods for causing this mistake in the first place. They don't actually like to be worshipped. They like to be cussed at. At least that's what they told me last time I talked to them. There we are. That's what we want to see. Yeah. All right, so we are done wrenching on the Wraith. I found that I had installed too long of screws in the tranny and there was plastic bits in it. Y'all just saw it happen, so you know what's going on. And now what I would love to do is go outside, do some crawling, and see how good our low speed control is now, because it was not nearly as good as it should have been last time I was crawling. And of course, I'm still feeling a little hitch in the drivetrain. No, I'm not. I'm lying. It feels smooth. So let's go out and test her out. So I did the work that we needed to do to smooth out the transmission, which was essentially fixing my mistakes, taking the plastic out of the transmission, and now what do we have but the smoothness that I expect from a Crawlmaster. And again, this is the Magnum Crawlmaster, so it's not quite as smooth as a normal Crawlmaster, but it has a whole lot more torque and plenty of wheel speed. So let's do a little bit of crawling and see how she does. And once it loads down in the grass, it's not going to be quite as smooth as unloaded typically. So we got to get past the oomph of getting going on the grass. And maybe I need to shim those axles a little bit now too. She's being a little touchy. Yeah, let's just get under the rocks. The rocks and the muck, because it rained and Missouri's got plenty of dirt. Where do you live? Is it more rocks where you are or dirt and rocks? Oh, she's hanging up like the Wraith likes to do on those boat sides. We need to take a little better line. There we are. Since this rig has dog bones in the front, it kind of looks a little jerky when it's starting and stopping. You can kind of see boing. That's drivetrain lash causing that. Just so you know, universals would have been a little tighter, less slop in the drivetrain. But we can armchair quarterback this rig all day long, and there's always going to be improvements that can be made. Oh, will she do it? Oh, this is the hard climb. I'm going to have to get a different angle and see. So it's good to know that the low speed control is back where it should be. It's nice and predictable. And it wasn't a manufacturing defect of the rig, it was a user error on my behalf. Oh, this is a tricky climb. Maybe if we just go super slow. She's not hooking. Of course, it is wet, and wet rocks don't have the grip of dry rocks, even with good tires. So I may just have to use a teeny bit of wheel speed to get past this point. Oh. All right. All right. All right, I say. You know I'm serious if I'm saying, all right. Oh, there we go. That was pretty tough to line up. We'll have to bump past that point. Oh, does she have enough grip? Oh, on wet rocks. The Voodoos do very well on Missouri limestone when they're wet. Pro lines do pretty good too. They typically don't clean out quite as well because of the tread pattern, but we have options, and I am definitely optioning to hang up my rear differential on that rock. Oh, we'll just move the rocks out of the way. Let's just use that magnum power and move our rocks. We don't need driving skill when we can just make our terrain suit the rig. Yeah, all right, I'm gonna have to line that up a little better. I'm being ignorant. There we go. We'll just creep through. Come on, traction. Whoa! Oh, I thought that I had it, but this is my rig, so I can flip it over where it's unrecoverable, I guess. I was gonna try to fix that with a little reverse action. Whee! Oh dear, scratching the body. All right, so very pleased with the smoothness. I think if I was gonna change anything right now, it would be shimming the axles. I believe that the pinions are binding just a little bit, leading to a little jerky startup. And that's something that these hypoid style axles kind of need to have, is very precise shimming to make sure that hypoid pinion is in the exact location that it needs to be. But I'm a snob, as I've said before, and I'm kind of splitting hairs on what this rig needs. It doesn't need anything really, but yeah. So thanks for tuning in. If you have any more questions about the rig, or if there are upgrades that you would like to see me do, or that you have done and that you like, let me know down in the comments. So without further ado, I thank you for tuning in, and have a good one.